I was in the 1st and the 7th.
My brother was in the 7th, 68 through 71. Did he overlap you?
No. 71, yes, he went in 71, yes.
Fort Bragg?
Fort Bragg.
Yeah, he was 68 through 71. He got out in April, and then he drove my mom to the hospital in May when she was giving birth to me. Can you believe that? 21 years older than me.
Senator, there's something I think that we need to do, and I think you're the person that should start it. The president kept a 4-star general and his CIA director, which were the same, and a true hero in the Iraq War.
Your economy can't grow like higher ed.
Planning to jerk the rug right out from underneath it?
Well,
or are you going to let it expire in 2022?
President that has exceptions, because what I'm interested in is higher education. Number one, she lied about what happens because so I am proud.
All right, guys, from one GOP presidential candidate to another. We are going from Marco Rubio in Iowa to Ted Cruz.
And now, I'm happy to answer or dodge any question you like. Yes, ma'am.
Senator Cruz, we need to know what your feelings are on your policy would be on the RFS.
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. You know, my view on energy is that we should pursue all of the above. God has blessed this country with tremendous natural resources, tremendous energy resources, and we ought to be pursuing oil and gas and coal and nuclear and solar and wind and biofuels and ethanol. I support every one of them. But I don't think that government should be picking winners and losers. And indeed, the tax plan that I have laid out in this campaign eliminates every energy subsidy, every energy mandate across the board, gets the federal government out of the business of picking one energy source over the other. It eliminates them all, treats them all fairly and equally. And let me mention something that I think is particularly important for ethanol. Listen, y'all have been subjected to a whole bunch of attacks by a bunch of lobbyists and Democrats who are spending a bunch of money keeping people focused on the RFS. And it is true, I believe we should phase out the RFS because I don't think we should have any mandates for any energy source. But there's a far more important government regulation than the RFS in terms of the impact on Iowa and farmers. And that is what's called the EPA blend wall. That right now the EPA prohibits the selling of gasoline with higher ethanol content than either E10 or E15. That blend wall makes it illegal for ethanol to expand its market penetration. And I intend to eliminate the EPA blend wall to get rid of that barrier, which will enable ethanol to expand in the marketplace to a much larger penetration, to sell more ethanol, more corn than under the status quo, but to do it not through a Washington mandate, not through lobbyists, not through subsidies, but to do it through the marketplace. If we get the barriers out of the way, ethanol is a mature product with demand in the marketplace, and if we open the door, ethanol can expand its penetration, which is what I expect to happen when I'm elected president.
But you also know that the RFS was created and put with a time limit of 2022, and that was to give us the confidence to invest in our local plants, which we have done. So are you planning to jerk the rug right out from underneath it?
Well,
or are you going to let it expire in 2022 like it should and then stand on its own? And corn ethanol does not get any subsidies. Steve King, you know that.
Ma'am, you rightly noted that the RFS is scheduled to expire in 2022. When I've said we should phase it out, I've said it should be a 5-year phase out. The phase out from 2017 to 2022 is 5 years. I do believe there should be a gradual phase out because there have been investment-backed expectations. But let me tell you, look, the lobbyists are trying the best they can to snooker the people of Iowa and convince the people of Iowa that a government mandate is the only way for ethanol to survive. Look, the problem is the government is blocking ethanol. And they're trying to convince you that a mandate is the way to go. I don't want Iowa dependent on Washington. I don't think Iowa farmers want to be dependent on Washington, because you know what that boils down to? That boils down to a bunch of politicians shaking the voters down over and over and over again. It's the Washington cartel. And what I want to do is remove the barriers and allow the farmers and ethanol producers in Iowa in the marketplace to expand their penetration. As you rightly noted, there has been no more ferocious defender of Iowa farmers than Steve King, and there's a reason Steve is standing with me in this campaign, because he understands that I believe passionately in a free and fair and open energy marketplace. Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about bureaucracy, the Department of Education, the ABC group. But they run the country because Congress has stepped back and abdicated all of their power over to them. And so then we're left to deal with this waterways of the United States or whatever it is, where they're way overstepping their bounds.
Yes.
So it'd have to be something new and different. What would you do to try to scale that back? They're so convinced that we're morons and we need them to run our life, and I don't need them. And so what would you do?
Ma'am, you are exactly right. One of the greatest challenges we've seen is the explosion of the regulatory state, of these unelected Washington bureaucrats that issue rule after rule after rule.
Right.
And one of the sad realities, when Democrats are in office, regulations expand exponentially. When Republicans are in office, regulations still expand. They just expand a little more slowly. You know, I had a friend of mine who suggested a bumper sticker. Republicans, we waste less. Not exactly a banner to march into battle on. You know, if you look at what Barack Obama has done with executive power that's been wrong, it's that he has intruded into the Article 1 lawmaking authority of Congress. Under Article 1 of the Constitution, all legislative power is vested in Congress. The President doesn't have the authority to make the law, to change the law, or ignore the law. But that being said, the President has robust authority under Article 2 of the Constitution. All executive power is vested in the President. And the regulatory state represents Congress's efforts over the decades to constrain the Article 2 regulatory authority of the President, or the Article 2 executive authority of the President. We have never seen a president willing to use the full Article 2 executive authority to go after the regulatory state. And I give you my word today that if I'm elected, when I leave office, it will not be the case that regulations will have grown just a little more slowly, but rather it will be the case that the body of federal regulations will be materially smaller and human liberty an equal amount larger, and among other things, I will rescind the Waters of the United States rule, which is an enormous burden. It's trying to put 97% of the farmland in Iowa under control of federal bureaucrats. It's wrong, it's lawless, and if I'm elected president, it will end.
Thank you.
All right, we'll do final question.
Senator, on taxes, you mentioned your flat tax, but as I read your tax plan, you also have a tax on business,
Yep.
an additional tax, which sounds to me or reads very much like the tax. Please explain why you prefer that over fair tax, which you and I have discussed on several occasions, and it seems more transparent.
Okay, so it's a great question. Let's start with the fair tax. I support the fair tax. I'm an original co-sponsor of the fair tax in the U.S. Senate. If I could push a button and magically adopt any tax plan, I would adopt the fair tax. That being said, I believe we have a long way to go in terms of persuading and educating the American people. I think there's a lot more distance to be traveled. I think a flat tax, much more has been done in terms of building the intellectual foundation, the popular support. I think people like Steve Forbes, people like Dick Armey have spent decades doing that. And I think the issue has changed because in the last 7 years we've seen the politicization and weaponization of the IRS targeting citizens for their political beliefs. That I think we have power to adopt this. So I intend to fight, to campaign on a flat tax, to make 2016 a referendum on two big things: adopting a flat tax and repealing every word of Obamacare. And to come out of November 2016 with a mandate from the American people. Now, you asked how my tax plan worked. Let me describe it in broad brush. Anyone who wants details and all the specific numbers, we have a very, very detailed white paper that is on our webpage. It's tedcruz.org. You can go through and see all the specifics and details if you want to drill down deeply. But let me give you the broad brush of it. For a typical family of four under the Cruz flat tax, typical family of four, the first $36,000 you earn, you pay nothing. Zero income tax, zero payroll tax, zero nothing. Above $36,000, everyone pays a simple flat tax of 10%. So no longer does a billionaire hedge fund manager pay a lower marginal tax rate than his secretary. Everyone pays the same simple flat tax that applies uniformly. Now, what that allows us to do is it allows everyone to fill out their taxes on a postcard. And we can eliminate the vast complexity, all of the bureaucracy that is the IRS. Now, the second component is on the business side. On the business side, we eliminate the corporate income tax. We eliminate the death tax. And actually, going back to farmers and ranchers, the question you asked before, the death tax is a tax on the American dream when farmers and ranchers and small business owners are forced to sell their homestead to pay the death tax. My tax plan eliminates that altogether. We eliminate the payroll tax, which is the single biggest tax most working men and women pay in their lifetimes. And we eliminate the Obamacare taxes. And we replace all of those with a simple 16% business flat tax. Now, the business flat tax, number one, it applies fairly and uniformly. So no longer do you have giant corporations with armies of accountants paying effectively little to no taxes while small businesses get hammered with an oppressive tax rate. The 16% business flat tax is fair and uniform on everything. In addition to that, there are two things about the business flat tax that are particularly compelling. Number one, any business that invests in plant or equipment, if you're a farmer and you buy a new tractor, if you're a printer and you buy a new printing machine, any plant and equipment you immediately expense. No more complicated depreciation tables, none of the complexity. Is just immediately expense all capital expenditures, which is a powerful encouragement for small businesses to create jobs. But in addition to that, the 16% business flat tax is what is called border adjustable. What that means is if you are producing goods or products to export, if you're a corn farmer and you're exporting corn, if you're a hog farmer and you're exporting hogs, if you're producing radios and you're exporting radios, all exports are 100% tax-free from the 16% business flat tax. That gives an enormous advantage to American farmers and ranchers and manufacturers to export. And the flip side is every import pays the 16% business flat tax, so that everyone competing in the U.S. is on a level playing field. Right now, when we export to Europe, when we export to Asia, they impose a tax on our goods coming in, but we don't do the same to them. This puts us on a level playing field. The impact of all of this, the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation concluded that under the Cruz simple flat tax, we would see 4.9 million new jobs. We would see capital investment increase 44%, and we would see every income group from the very poorest to the very richest have double-digit increases in after-tax income of at least 14%. Which, to put that in real terms, if you're a single mom making $40,000 a year, that is over $5,000 after tax in your pockets to provide for your kids and to help make ends meet. It will have a profound effect on restarting the American economy. And my top priority is economic growth, because it's economic growth that enables us to do everything else, to pay down our debt and deficit, to rebuild our military, to defeat radical Islamic terrorism, to strengthen and preserve Social Security. With growth, we can do all of that. And the simple flat tax with a mandate from the people is how we get that done. And with that, I just want to thank you all for being here. God bless you.